Welcome to Courtside Moms. I'm your host, Wendy Sparks. Today's guest is the wonderful Jazette Lane-English, who is the mother of A.J.English III, who last played overseas with the Lavrio Basketball Club in Greece. She is also the ex-wife of retired player A.J.English II, who started his career in the NBA and then later went abroad. Tune in and hear how this family managed being in so many countries while keeping life normal.
I do it naturally. I do it naturally. Baby, baby. I'm every woman.
Thank you for coming on the show, Jazette. I can't wait for the listeners to learn about you and your family and your professional basketball journey that started in the U.S. and later moved to Italy and other countries. So, welcome.
Thank you, Wendy, for having me. I really appreciate you even being interested in my story. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Absolutely. So, your perspective will be a little bit different from my previous guest, simply because both your ex-husband, A.J. English II, and your son, A.J. English III, have played pro basketball. So, your insight comes from two different angles.
Yes, it absolutely does. Yes, I was married to a professional basketball player, and now I'm the mother of a professional basketball player. So I do have a different perspective from those that just have sons, if you will, or and those who were just married to pros.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's start with AJ the second.
Okay, sure.
So originally from Delaware,
Yes.
AJ English the second went to Virginia Union, which is a Division II college where he played 4 seasons from I think it was 86 to 90.
Yes.
Before entering the draft.
Yes.
So back then, what was preparation like for players to get ready for the draft?
So obviously, the preparation to even be qualified or mentioned at that level is just takes dedication and a commitment to the sport of basketball, to the game itself. And AJ English II was always a hard worker, very competitive, just by nature, and didn't back down from anyone, in sports. He loved the game. He was committed to the game, and he spent a lot of his time, obviously, on the court. So leading up to draft day, of course, there were a lot of nerves, a lot of hype around the possibility of his being drafted in our city. We come from a small town, Wilmington, Delaware. So not very many pros came out of Wilmington, Delaware. There were a couple. I'll name Terrence Stansbury was one of them that came from our town. But everybody was excited and gearing up for draft day for AJ the second. Right. And we were, as a family, we were all excited, and just anticipating. Obviously, he had an agent at the time, and we all went down to Richmond, Virginia. We had a family down there. We went to Richmond, Virginia, and watched the draft together there. We didn't go to New York or wherever the draft was at the time. We were at his college coach's home in Richmond, Virginia, surrounded by family, and that's where we spent draft day.
Wow. So he was picked 10th in the second round or 37th overall to the then Washington Bullets.
Right.
So what was that experience like for you as a wife now that your husband was a part of an NBA franchise?
Okay, so at the time we were not married. We had my oldest daughter, our firstborn. At the time, we were not married then, but we were excited. I was happy for him because I felt like he did so years and years of dedicated hard work to reach his dream and realize his dreams about becoming a professional basketball player. But as far as the spot he was drafted, the 37th pick, he was disappointed. His agent was disappointed. So there were a lot of questions and phones were ringing, all during the draft because he was expected to be drafted much higher than that, sooner than that. So for him, I think he was a little bit disappointed, grateful at the same time because he made it to the league, but he was disappointed because he thought that he was going to go higher. Or at least he was, pegged to go higher, to go sooner in the draft.
Right.
But we were all excited. We all celebrated afterwards because you have to be thankful for the blessings that you receive from God. So it was twofold. We were happy on one end. I was elated because I watched him work hard to get there, but he just was a little disappointed because he thought he was going to go sooner, and then the pressure of that coming from his agent and you know everybody else that was involved from the business perspective weighed on his shoulders. So I think he was a little bit anxious about that.
Now, AJ played against so many great players. I mean, let's say Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and way many more. What was it like seeing him measure up to these notable players?
Well, it was great actually because he talked about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was always the measuring stick, that
Right.
players measured themselves by. So he always spoke highly of Michael Jordan. He was a fan of Michael Jordan, just like most of us, just like most of the world. But he's so competitive that he wasn't going to back down from even Michael Jordan. And I will say that candidly, that's one of the things that I loved about him is that he was just competitive and he was not afraid of anyone on the basketball court. So he was going to go out there and put his best forward and go at whoever his opponent was, and that's exactly what he did. So I remember leading up to the night when he had to play Michael Jordan for the first time, and he was, we were just talking about it, excited, of course, and he just was saying, he can't believe he's about to play Michael Jordan. I think they called him the Black Cat at the time. I remember my husband, he's my ex-husband now, but referring to him as the Black Cat. And he said, I got to play him. And I was basically like, yeah, go get him. You know what I mean? So, and he went and he played him. And he said afterwards, he got 35 points. And then everybody was like, well, what did Michael get? He said he got 50. We just burst out laughing because, I mean, what can you do against Michael Jordan? I mean,
exactly.
realistically, but he got his 35 points though,
Amen.
So he went at him and did his thing. And I think that Michael Jordan had a level of respect for him because of that, so they had little messages that they would exchange on the court that really no one would know about during games when they played later on. But I think that Michael Jordan respected him because he did, try to really play. He really played him,
Right.
but AJ got 35 and Michael got 50 that game. So
that's awesome.
Right.
So after 2 years, the Bullets offered AJ a deal that was later declined, and he signed with the Trailblazers. But unfortunately, he got waived.
Right.
So this fast forwarded his career overseas to Italy, Spain, France, Turkey, Greece. I mean, what was your experience like in all of these countries? Because by now you have children, so there's school involved, and there's so much more. So tell us about your dynamic there.
Okay, well, if I could just backtrack to the deal with the Washington Bullets, which was very disappointing because the reason why he didn't sign with the Washington Bullets was over a petty argument that his agent had with the then GM. And you know how things like that can happen, and then they can derail players' careers if the agents and the general managers are not on the same page. So we went down and we met with Wes Unseld and I think John Nash at the time, and we discussed the deal. We were excited. AJ was excited and prepared to sign the deal. So we drove down from Delaware down to DC and met with them, and then after that, we came home, and the next morning, they had signed someone else. And we didn't know what happened until we found out that there was an argument that took place between his agent and somebody at the organization. So that's how that deal did not end up being signed by AJ. So I just want to put that out there because maybe someone will learn from that. Another player, another family would learn, from that experience. You just have to be careful with who your representation is. And I'm not saying that the agent did it deliberately by any means, but things can just go amok if personalities and egos get in the way. So fast forward from there, we go overseas after he did not sign back with Washington. We went overseas. He suffered an injury while he was overseas, and the team hid it from him. The team injected him because we didn't speak the language. We were in Italy at the time, and we did not speak the Italian language. So we didn't really, he had to trust what the doctors were telling him. And he kept complaining. He kept complaining about his ankle, which later caused a hip problem because he had to favor his ankle that was injured. So he put more pressure on the opposite hip. So then he started suffering from hip issues. And so from there, came back to the States, and he played for Portland. He was injured and didn't realize how serious his injury was, and couldn't understand why he wasn't as explosive as he normally was. So that had a lot to do with his being waived. So it was just like a trickle down effect from things. Things just spiraled into to his not being kept by Portland, and then us returning overseas. So that's kind of in a nutshell what took place in that area. So again, for the players that are overseas, you just have to be mindful and pay attention to what's going on, and have a translator, especially when you're dealing with hospitals and doctors and medical situations, to make sure that you are aware of what's going on with you and that you're being taken care of, and think they're doing to you the things that they say that they're doing to you, and that they're open and honest about injuries, because he kept complaining, and I kept saying something isn't right, because there's no way that your injury is minor, you're suffering from that much pain, and then they keep injecting you with these shots, so that you don't feel the pain, and you can go out there and excel on the court for their organization, So that led to us going back over to Europe. And as far as my European experience is concerned, I loved everything about it. I dreamed about, as a 15-year-old girl in high school, I used to watch TV shows that featured, different fashion shows and things like that were occurring over in Europe. So I used to be in my room watching TV, daydreaming and saying to myself, one day I'm going to get to those places. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but one day I'm going to get there. And I used to watch fashion shows on TV that were in Milan, that were in Madrid, that were in Paris, that were in Greece, like all over Europe. And lo and behold, fast forward 10 years later, and I'm living in these places, traveling these places, shopping in these places, raising my children in these places, and sharing it with AJ, who at the time was the love of my life. So it was just brilliant for me, and I knew that it was the grace of God, because I dreamt about living or at least visiting those places, and then I end up living in all of those places.
How did your children adjust to these different countries, like with schools and learning new languages and having friends?
Well, my kids hated it because they wanted to be with family. They were very close to my mother and my grandmother. We were very, very family oriented, people. So they didn't like having to leave them. But what they did enjoy was the food, and the basketball, the sports, and being able to see their dad play ball. But they really missed being home because they didn't speak the language either. Right. But you have to kind of coax your kids, and I don't want to say force them, but you got to push them out the nest, so to speak, and push them along. So that's exactly what we did. We signed them up for school. They went to in Paris. Well, it was actually about 10 minutes from where our flat was in Paris, in a small town called Neuilly in France. And they went to the international school in Neuilly, and they were there with the children of dignitaries and presidents and nice. Ambassadors and really what do you call them? Not high level, but just a certain upper echelon of children that they attended school with, and they learned French, and they learned computers, because back then, they were just starting to get the personal computers out all over the place and all that. But they were able to go, and then they met a couple of friends. But overall, they really would have preferred to be in the States, if I could just be honest. And then they also attended school in Italy as well. but they enjoyed. They had their good days and they had their bad days. But if they had to choose, then at the time they would have chosen to be here. But now, as adults looking back on it, they're happy that they had the experience and they talk about it with their friends. And it's good for me to hear them say, you know, I'm glad that I had the opportunity. So, you know, it's just, you know how kids are, you just have to, you got to do what you got to do with your kids. So, but overall, I would say that now they believe that it was a great experience because it's an experience that many of their friends cannot say that they have.
Or never will be able to have. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk about AJ the third.
Okay, my baby.
How old was he when he started getting involved in basketball, playing organized basketball? Like, where did it all start for him?
Okay, well, I would tell you that when we had AJ's first birthday party, we got him a basketball pool. A little private little pool that was a blow up little pool, but it had a basketball court at the end of it, and he couldn't even really walk yet. So we sat him in the pool, gave him a ball, and we filled the pool up with water, let him sit there. The water was only waist high as he was sitting down. And we let him, start shooting the ball, and he was making shots. He was sitting there on his butt making shots. So those were his first experience, as a mom, when we got that pool and watched him shoot the ball. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But it's a passing thing. But that was his first experience, shooting a basketball. Then I enrolled him at 3 years old. He started going to the YMCA and just running around on the court in the YMCA. And then at 5, he started playing organized basketball with the YMCA, and his brother Asian was right there with him. I snuck him in. I told them that he was older than he was. So Asian was on the court at the YMCA at 3 and 3 and 4, and AJ was there at 5. So that's when they started playing organized basketball. For the first time.
So this is back in the U.S.
Yes, in the U.S. Yep, the YMCA in the U.S. Yes.
Wow, your family had so much movement.
Yeah, a ton of movement, because we didn't always go with AJ. We sometimes we would go months at a time. Sometimes we would go and visit. Sometimes we would go and stay. So it just depends. You know how life is. It just depended on where we were in life and what was best for our family at the time. So.
Right, absolutely. So your son AJ played high school for, forgive me if I mispronounce this, the Apocalyptic High School. No. Like, you couldn't send him to like John Academy.
No, just call it APO. Just call it APO.
But for our listeners, say the name of the school.
Apocalyptic High School. Yes, in Delaware. Apocalyptic High School in Delaware. Yes.
Y'all heard that. Okay. And then after he moved to St. Thomas More in Oakdale, Connecticut. So why did he change to go to Connecticut?
So AJ graduated from Appoquinimink High School, but then he went to St. Thomas More for a post-grad year, just to develop his basketball, skills a little bit more under a different coach. And he went to St. Thomas More up in Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he later went to Iona College in New York, where he played 4 great seasons from 2012 to 2016. And then he entered the draft.
Yes.
So for you, this is the second time that you're experiencing an NBA draft.
Yes.
So what was it like for you this time around?
Well, it was incredible because, I was back there again, with my son this time. And then obviously it's a different experience because I got to see my son from the time I put him in that pool all the way up to the draft, so it was very emotional, very exciting. I was just so thankful to God, for his opportunity to make it that far, because AJ the third, as far as discipline off the court, was way more disciplined than his dad, on so many levels, just more focused, discipline, not a run the streets kind of hoopla kind of a kid, never been like that, just very kind of introverted. And his focus was just incredible as far as his dedication to, his career. So to watch him go from his trials and tribulations, his accomplishments from his first year in that pool, and then go make it all the way up to the draft. It was just an amazing experience. I was proud of him, as a mom, and just excited. The whole family was excited.
Right. Well, was the hype around the draft a lot more different from when AJ the second entered versus your son?
Well, yeah, it was more hype because we had social media for one thing, and we didn't have that back then.
That's
we
right.
barely even had everyone barely even had cell phones back for the draft when AJ the second was drafted. So much more hype, much more buzz around, and again back in the same hometown, from when his dad was drafted. So it was incredible, the buzz around AJ the third being drafted. So yeah, with you had that, and then you include social media, and the internet, and yeah, it was incredible hype around the draft.
Did you as a family feel more prepared now? And like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys, now that's your second time, did you feel like you knew a little bit more than you did from 1990?
Well, yeah, we felt more prepared because his dad had gone through the process, and then there were a ton of friends who had gone through the process leading up to that. AJ's, friends that he played AAU with, and then his dad's friends who became pros. We watched a lot of people get drafted from the inside instead of on the outside.
Right.
We were on the inside looking out, so yeah, we felt like we were more prepared, but at the same time, we knew that it was kind of in God's hands, and there are politics involved and all that. So nothing was guaranteed. So we were in that space. We didn't assume that he was going to be drafted. We hoped that he was, but we didn't assume anything because in this world anything can happen. You know how it goes with
right.
pro basketball.
Right. So let's talk about draft night. Like, what did you guys do? How did you prepare for it? Where were you?
We were at home. It was just, we were at home draft night with a couple of people. We didn't make a big deal out of anything. Right. We were just there watching the draft. AJ was going on about his business. I don't even think he watched it. Just I think AJ may have been, I can't remember if he was, I know he worked out, and I think he might have been playing the video game or that stuff that they play on those video games, but he was just acting like it was a normal day. We didn't do much. We just gathered together and watched the draft. A small group of us at home.
So that night he went undrafted. However, he was named by Sports Illustrated as one of the 10 best players who went undrafted in 2016. So was this surprising to AJ the third?
Yeah, we were all surprised because AJ had accomplished all the accolades that was required for him to be drafted. So we were very, very surprised. But like I said, we're well grounded, and because we had been in the business for so many years, we were prepared in case something like that happened. And then with us living abroad and having such worldly experience, we were just prepared and just ready for whatever came.
Of course.
Yeah.
So that summer he played in the summer league with the Golden State Warriors, and then later on he got the contract to play in Italy. So this was familiar territory for you.
Yes, it was. It was. It was. Well, we were excited when he went to play with Golden State Warriors, and then he ended up, the decision was made that he would go to Italy. So again, it was like deja vu, preparing to go to Italy, just like we did when his dad, prepared to go overseas for the first time. It was Italy. AJ was in the south of Italy, but his dad was in the north of Italy. But Italy's Italy,
There you go.
So we were preparing for that, and it was just like kind of like second nature because we all lived over there before. We all traveled, over there to and from many, many times. So it was like we were going back to a home away from home, if you will.
Yeah.
So AJ And AJ the third, and I took the trip initially. We went over there, just the two of us. Went over there to get him set up, and they had this big a ton of fans waiting for him at the airport.
Yes.
He was bombarded. He had all these people there. The reception that they gave him was amazing. And the thing is that during his travels, people would come up and say, "Are you the little boy that used to be running around on the court over here like years ago? Was that you? Are you the same little boy? Because we know your age, your dad. Since we had another player named A.J.English II. Was that your dad?" And then AJ said, "Yeah, that's my dad." And then they say, "So it was you. You were one of the little boys. It was two little boys." His brother Asian, and then you. And he said, "Yeah, it was me." And then they just some of them welled up with tears. Some of them gave him gifts. Some of them pat him on his head. So it was like he got such a warm reception going back over there, just because they remember his dad and they remember his, being at all his dad's games with his brother and his sister. So it just was amazing. The experience was great. And I love Italy. That's one of my favorite places in Europe, from the food to the fashion to the weather. And then the people there are so warm and welcoming. It just, it was like we returned, we went to a home away from home.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
This time around, were you involved with his contract negotiations and getting him all set up?
Oh yeah. Every contract that AJ gets, I read over it. Every one of it. He won't sign it until I read it and tell him to go ahead and sign it. He won't. He just won't do it. And I don't necessarily get into like he should be getting this amount of money versus that amount of money. I don't do that, but I just make sure that whatever he decides he wants to play for, and whatever he requests, that all of that is specified in the contract and it's all ironed out. And then I go, if there's something that's missing or something that's off, I call his agent and I tell his agent, "You need to fix this. Why is this in here? What does this mean? I thought AJ said he wanted this. Why isn't this in here?" Like, I'm the one that goes to his agent and I'm like, "My son said he wanted these 10 items, and make sure these 10 items are in here." Right. I don't say to AJ, "Well, don't go. You need to make sure you get this, or you need to, tell them you want whatever he says he decides he wants." I go and make sure that it's in there. It's his life, it's his career, it's his decision. Right. So I don't infringe that way. But if my child said he wants 5 chicken wings, you better make sure the 5 chicken wings are cooked the way he wants them.
Don't come with 4.
That's right. Don't come with 4. Don't come with them extra crispy. That's not what he asked for. But they better be in his contract. That's when I come in like a honestly like a pit bull, because that's what I am when it comes to my kids. Yeah. So that's the role that I play. And then obviously his wherever he lives has to be what he needs. It has to be comfortable. It has to be clean. It has to be, everything he needs. Internet, his service, if he's going overseas, whatever he needs. Those are the ways that I support him. And then after I tell him to go ahead and sign it, then he signs off on the deal and goes to work. Does what he has to do.
Right. Were you more cautious this time when choosing an agent?
Well, he chose his own agent. Mm-hmm. We interviewed several of them, and then I just told AJ, we looked at the pros and cons of each sports agency, each agent. And I told AJ that he's the one that has to interact with this person. This person is going to represent him. So make sure that his ethics and his business acumen lines up with what AJ feels is meets AJ's standards and AJ's requirements. It really doesn't have anything to do with me. And so he met with the people and interacted and make sure that they meshed and because like I said, my son is no nonsense, so he's not going to deal with somebody that has a bunch of hoopla around him and drama and flashy, just not that kind of a person. So that they had their personalities obviously had to mesh and complement each other, but at the same time he knows that he needed somebody that was going to represent him and make sure that the organizations are meeting his needs and all the ball clubs are meeting his needs. Right. So once he came to those terms, then once we kind of narrowed it down to 1 or 2, then I did my background checks on them. I went and checked and saw if they had any, mm-hmm. lawsuits and, things like that. And then ultimately AJ made his own decision which agent he was going to go with, because it's his decision. It's his life. Like I said, it's his career, it's his decision.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to make sure you audit everybody that's in your life, especially when these people have influence over your career.
Right. Exactly.
And it's good that you, as a parent, you did it with him. Because I know some parents that just allowed their child to do it, and then next thing you know, they're in a different country, and
Right. Exactly.
they have nothing.
Right.
No
Exactly.
pay,
No,
half the
nothing.
time, no
Yep.
nothing. And you really, they go by the excitement of, oh, my child is playing pro ball, and they don't
Right.
bother
Yeah.
reading it. And I find that so important.
Yeah, it's very important. And then with his dad, we talked about his agent at the time, but I didn't play such a integral role in his making his decision on the agent. That's what he did with his his closest friends and his mother. Although we had conversations about who he's decided to go with and all that, but I didn't play such a as heavily a role in that area back then. And then I was young anyway. I really didn't know too much back then.
Right.
So yeah.
So where he had a minor injury last year, and then with this COVID-19 virus now that has globally shut down sports, is he taking this time to recover and then return to playing either overseas or somewhere?
He AJ's still working out. He hasn't stopped, and he's still working out. He's still dedicated every day. He works out every single day. He does something. I've been hearing from a lot of moms, and they're saying they can't even get their sons off the couch. They're not doing anything. And even AJ spoke with one of his trainers in New York, and the trainer told him that nobody's even coming and working out with him. Nobody's calling him now. Now it's understandable because of COVID-19. I'm not saying that, but I think he's shocked that no one seems to be doing anything. No one seems to be working out with as far as the players that he normally would hear from or see doing something. But AJ makes it a point to do something every single day. He works out every day. And he's preparing for whatever God has for him. It may not necessarily be overseas. It may be back here in the league. It's just you never know what's going to happen. But he's going to be prepared for the opportunity when it arises.
Yes. So now let's move on to you. Oh. Now that your kids are grown, you're in the U.S. What does Jazette do?
What doesn't Jazette do?
I know.
So Jazette has a company. It's called Speak English 5 Sports Communications Group Incorporated. Speak English 5. Speak is because we use the word speak because we are champions for WIPS, Women Inside Professional Sports, and we share their stories and let the world know all the magnificent things that Women Inside Professional Sports give to the world of professional sports and to everybody that loves the game, their families, their communities. So we like to champion WIPS, and we put their stories out there. We create platforms and space for women inside sports to advocate equality personally and professionally. That's what our mission statement is at Speak English 5. Now, English, obviously, that's my last name, so that's where that came in, and it just happens to be the language that is universal around the world. So the WIPS has a common language. So it's like a play on words. We WIPS have a common language. We doesn't matter what sport we're involved in. We all seem to share the same stories. We all have the same pains. We all the same joys, and we all have the same desires on a deep level. So English being a universal language, WIPS sharing a universal language, it's kind of like a play on words, if you will. And the number 5 is the number that both my sons wear on their jerseys in college playing basketball. So that's how we came up with the name Speak English 5. And Sports Communications Group is just because it's sports, and we share communications that we get from when we do our interviews and things like that. So that's kind of where the name came up. That's how we came up with that name. And go ahead.
And what about WIPS Unscripted? Let's talk about that a bit.
WIPS Unscripted, Women Inside Professional Sports Unscripted. When we started our company, Speak English 5, we started out doing a sports column, and we went around interviewing WIPS from different areas of sports. WIPS from the NBA, from the NFL, the MLB, the WNBA, pro boxing, hockey, soccer, like just women from many areas of sports. And we started interviewing them, and we discovered that, like I just said, they share the same stories and the same desires that I had and my daughter had, kind of being in the shadow of the professional athlete in her family. So we wanted to get their stories and help them put their stories out there, help them release, and then get aligned with whatever their path is for their lives individually. So we interviewed women from those areas of sports during a 3-year period. And then one day we decided that we would write a book. We would select the topics that seemed to be most important to whips. And those topics would be the chapters, the name of the chapters. And then we would put quotes as it pertained to those topics from the women inside pro sports that we interviewed. So we kind of took the best quotes from those women and we put them all in this book. And that's how we came up with Whips Unscripted. And unscripted is because they're just so candid and open and honest in what they share with us, because they trusted us and they knew that we could relate because we experienced some of the same things. And that one thing that they know is that when we interview people, we work from integrity, just like you do, Wendy. And we say to them, whatever you're sharing, after you share, if you decide that you don't want it written, we will not put it in writing. And so they felt comfortable enough to be open and honest about everything that they shared. So that's why it's unscripted, because nothing is scripted. It's just raw, honest facts about what they experienced in their life, and that's how we came up with the title. And we have so many great women featured in the book. The names a lot of people would recognize the names of the women. They would recognize the faces if they read the book. A lot of great women in pro sports.
So where can people get a copy of this?
Oh, you can get a copy of Amazon Books, and online Barnes and Noble as well.
Okay. Now, again, you're involved in a million other things, and I know you are ready to launch a sports academy with AJ, and then this virus just put everything on halt. Tell me about that.
So, with my ex-husband, when we were living here in Wilmington, Delaware, years ago, I used to be a program director, and I would create programs for minorities and to give back to low-income communities. So I had an art program and a garment construction program. So I went to the city of Wilmington and negotiated a deal to be able to offer their program in some of the community centers in the city where I grew up in. So at the time, I also said, well, what about sports? I said to myself. So I sat in a meeting with the city of Wilmington, and I also negotiated a contract for AJ, my ex-husband, to do a sports camp in Wilmington as well for the summer. So I brought that up to say that both my sons and even my daughter got the experience of being involved in, behind the scenes and participating in a sports camp that I helped create with their dad years ago. So AJ has had that experience and been able to witness the benefits of giving back to the community and being able to use whatever your gift is and apply that to a program, and then turn around and give it back and be able to support and uplift the area that you grew up in. So AJ decided that now he wants to do the same thing. He wants, because so many people have come up to him and said, "Can you teach me how to play ball? Can you teach me how to shoot?" Because my youngest son is one of the best dribblers I've ever seen, ball handler. So everyone's saying, "I want to be able to dribble like AJ, and I want to be able to shoot like AJ." That's what everybody always said. So we decided to start a sports academy, and Appoquinimink, the high school that both the boys graduated from, offered their facilities to make that happen. So we were starting the program. We had everything put in place. We had the schedule and everything. We even had people starting to register, and then COVID-19 hit. And as you know, there's quarantining. All the schools shut down. We have to social distance, so we had to put all of that on hold. But everything, the program is just sitting and waiting for us to go ahead and take off, as soon as we're able to. But it's called the A.J.English III Sports Academy, and so we're really, really excited about that. AJ's also getting back up at his college at Iona and worked their sports camps. He's worked some of his fellow pro pro friends, pro athletes, their camp. So he has tons of experience in that area. So he's ready to, to get back to the community and share his gifts and his talents from his own perspective in his own lane with, through his A.J.English III Sports Academy.
You are a give back to the community family.
Yes.
Which is so good, because it's like you're saying, AJ has, or both of them have such great talents, and they're sharing it with a lot of kids that just want to dream for, you know what I mean, that day, and be like the best basketball player that they can be. So I think it's awesome that you guys are actually doing all these things. So let's just hope that this COVID will be finished soon, so that you guys can move forward
we're hoping
with your plans.
Yeah, we're hoping for that. I'm sure, God has it all under control. We just have to be patient and just do our due diligence to stay safe and healthy.
Right. So, Jazette, tell me, have you been tuning into The Last Dance?
Yeah. I watched The Last Dance. Actually, and I think it's great. I think it was a great. I think they did a great idea, a great thing when they captured Michael Jordan and shared, his story. I think it's amazing.
So, what is AJ's opinion about the show?
Well, AJ, his opinion about the show, he thinks that it was a great show, and he learned a lot of things that he didn't know, but there were a lot of things that he does know, being on the inside of that world. But AJ thinks that Michael Jordan is who he is because he's the ultimate competitor. He just wanted to be the best at everything that he does, and his opinion of Michael Jordan is, he says he might not be the best team player, but that's because of his competitive nature. He really just wants to win. So who can be mad at that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's AJ's opinion of Michael Jordan, but he believes that The Last Dance was a great show, a great program.
What does AJ the third feel about his dad playing against Michael Jordan?
Well, he thinks that it's amazing that his dad got the opportunity to play against Michael Jordan. Like I said, Michael Jordan is the measuring stick, I think, for most people that play basketball. Not all, because other people have other favorites: Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, all of those players that are also obviously great at what they do. But he thinks that it's amazing that he can say that his dad played against Michael Jordan and a lot of those players. And then he watched him play against some of the players. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. He thinks it's cool.
So now that you've lived all these years as a basketball wife and a basketball mom, tell me, what advice would Jazette like to give to parents whose sons or daughters end up playing overseas?
The advice that I would give to anyone who has a son or a daughter that play overseas is that United States isn't the only country in the world, obviously. So your son or daughter playing overseas is also a major accomplishment. It's just that they're playing ball at the highest level in another country. So the experience, if you embrace it, could be a beautiful experience. You just have to be grateful, obviously, for the blessings, because there are so many people that wish they could have, that their child could even make it to that level of play. So the opportunity to play pro is just a blessing in itself. Really, no matter where it is, provided it's not in a third world country or anything like that. I don't know anything about that. We don't have those experiences, but just embrace it. Just make sure that you know who you're dealing with, who the club is, and that they're upstanding, and you got to be mindful and make sure that you're going to get the pay that you're supposed to receive. Make sure that you dot all your I's, cross all your T's when it comes to your contract, and make sure you have an agent representation who's willing to fly there to see you. That's very important. Not going to dump you off or send you over there, and then you don't hear from them anymore, and they don't come and represent you the way they agreed to, and the way that you had paid them to. But that's the business side of it. Just make sure that you have everything in writing, and you have the representation that you need, that can move when you need them to move and take care of things that you need them to take care of. And as far as the experience, open up, be open minded, take advantage of the beauty of the country wherever you're going. And just embrace it, appreciate it, and look for the beauty in it, and then play your heart out, do your thing as if you were here. Just play ball, and just be open to the process. And like I said, there's no cookie cutter route for anybody that plays, that's a pro athlete. But you have to be prepared, and you have to embrace the opportunities that are presented, because everybody doesn't get those opportunities. So that's the advice that I would give, anybody that's going overseas or that's playing here in the States. And incidentally, I have a short story that I want to share about being overseas. And then The Last Dance, when during The Last Dance, there's a couple of scenes in there where they talk about Michael Jordan and the team going over to play in Paris, which they crushed the team so bad it was disgusting. But at any rate, we were there. We were in Paris in our flat when they were over there, actually. And it was just the town was just so excited that Michael Jordan and the team were coming from the States and coming over there to play. And we were there, also in anticipating having some Americans come over that spoke the language, and that my ex-husband played against, and that they were his comrades or whatever. So it was just great to see the gym on the Last Dance, and the people, and his sons were on the court playing ball, the same court that my sons played on. It was just pretty cool to see that. And then for my ex to go to the gym and be able to interact with them while they were over there in Paris. It was just nice. It was very, very nice.
Wow, that is awesome. It's so great, I find, when you can watch a show and then you can relate your life to it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I thought The Last Dance was great. I thought it was a great show.
Jazette, I thank you so much for sharing your insight and for coming on the show, and for everything that you do. You're so involved in a lot of things, and you're inspiring to a lot of women and a lot of players, because you're putting a different level with women in sports, in professional sports. So I look forward to doing things with you in the future, as we had spoken about. And I appreciate you coming on the show and believing in courtside moms, and wanting to speak your piece, because it's so important for people out there to understand what life is like in professional basketball from different perspectives, and not just as the player.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Wendy. I'm honored that you, like I said, you wanted to have the conversation, and you wanted to hear my story and invite me to share it on your platform. I really appreciate your invitation, and this has been a great conversation, because obviously you can relate being a mother of a pro yourself. So it's just like I'm talking to my sister friend,
yes.
And we have a ton of things that I'm going to drive you crazy with. I'm just let the record show that I warned her ahead of time that I'm always have projects for whips, because we got to do our thing and let people know, let the world know that we are the threads of the fabric of professional sports.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jazette.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's all in me. Anything you want done, baby.